Okay, 19b, towards the bottom of the page. We have 3 lines before the wide lines. Yosef, Rav Chanina, Rav Oshia. Rav Chanina, Rav Oshia were sitting with Lahu. They asked the following question. You bring Meiser Sheni, a Pischa di Yerushalayim Mahu. So you're by the entrance of Yerushalayim. What's the halacha? Pshita of Huba Chutz Umaso Bifnim. Let's say somehow you are outside the walls, but your baggage is inside. So your Meiser Sheni is now you're right by the entrance, and you're still outside, but let's say you're pushing a shopping cart, or maybe the bag you're holding is in front of you. You have a backpack on your stomach, something like that. So if that part's inside, so then for sure, kaltuhu mechitzas, the walls absorbed it, and now you're considered inside Yerushalayim. And now if you were to eat that outside, you're in trouble. And now you can't redeem it either, because now you're inside of the walls of Yerushalayim. So what if hu bifnim, you've now entered, but masol b'chutz, let's say your backpack is still outside. So mahu, what's the din? What's the halacha? So tana lahu lahu saba. So the certain elder, which either refers to Eliyahu Navi or somebody else, he said, with the debate of Shimon Yochai, he said in the name of Rav Shimon Yochai, ki yirchak mimcha hamakom. It says that by Meiser Sheni, it says that if you're far from the place that Hashem chose, so you have to be far from the place. So what's considered far? Ki yirchak mimcha, it's far from you, the place. Mi milu echa. Far from you means you and your fullness. So not only you, but anything which is an extension of you, anything which you are carrying, anything which is your fullness. So your stuff is included in that. So your fullness includes the things that you're carrying, not just you, but the things that you're carrying also. So therefore, so one second. So as long as you're in this situation, whether you're inside the walls and your bag's outside, or you're outside and your bag's inside, that's still considered. It's not considered that you're far anymore, because part of you is at least there, and if part of you is there, so that's good enough. You have to be totally, all of your fullness has to be far from the place. But if part of your fullness, meaning you or your baggage, is inside the walls, so that's already considered like you are inside the walls of Yerushalayim, and you can eat the Meiser Sheni. So now, Bayir of Papa Nakile Bekanya Mai. What if you are holding your Meiser Sheni with a stick behind you? So you have a long stick, imagine you put it over your shoulder or whatever, and on the end of the stick is a small little bag of Meiser Sheni. So is that considered that you're in the walls, or is that considered outside the walls? It's not necessarily on your shoulders, so it's not considered part of your fullness. It's farther removed from you because you're not carrying it. Before we said the things that are part of your fullness, so to speak, are things that you are carrying. So, but this is a very long stick. It's not like on your shoulders. The food is already at the end of the stick. So, is that considered like you're carrying it, and therefore you're considered inside the walls of Yerushalayim, or that's too far removed? And if it's too far removed, so then it's considered outside the walls of Yerushalayim, and that we say teku, that we don't know. Amar of Asi, Amar of Yochanan, Meiser Sheni, Meiser Sheni. From which point are you obligated in Meiser Sheni? So, at what point are you obligated in Meiser Sheni? So, Mishara Pnei Choma. Once you see the walls of Jerusalem, which I believe means once you enter into the walls, once you're there. So once you're there, so now you can no longer redeem it anymore. You can only redeem Meiser Sheni if you're outside the walls. And yeah, so Rashi points out that our mission that says you get Malkus is when you brought the Ma'aser Sheni in and then you exited. In that case, you'll get Malkus. But here we're asking, until what point are you actually obligated in having to eat it in Yerushalayim and forbidden to redeem it outside? That's only once you enter. But until you enter, so then you're not officially obligated yet. My time, how do I know? So we're at the very bottom of 19b. So it says, one verse says, you have to eat the Ma'aser Sheni and before Hashem your God. And another verse says, you cannot eat it in your gates. So says the Gemara, these two go together. As long as you can call it, that you're standing before Hashem, and you can eat it, so then we say, once you're obligated in eating it in Yerushalayim, you are now forbidden to eat it outside of Yerushalayim. They go together. But until you are obligated to eat it inside Yerushalayim, you are not obligated if you eat it outside Yerushalayim. So if you bring your Ma'aser Sheni up before you've entered into Yerushalayim, so you're not going to be obligated, you're not going to be liable if you eat the Ma'aser Sheni, at least with lashes, but with a negative prohibition. But if you enter the walls and now you're obligated to eat, so now you're also obligated to not bring it outside and eat it there. And as long as you can't consider the place you're standing before Hashem your God, you have to eat it. Then you're not going to be obligated and do not eat it in your gates. So they have to go together. Once you're inside the walls of Yerushalayim, you are now obligated to eat your Ma'aser Sheni, and then you are forbidden to bring it outside Yerushalayim and eat it. But until you've entered the walls of Yerushalayim, that prohibition has not kicked in. Yeah. Okay. Now we're going to bring a difficulty on this idea that you're only obligated you're forbidden to eat the Ma'aser Sheni outside of Yerushalayim, only kicks in once you're inside Yerushalayim. And now we're going to have a difficulty. Meisvei, Rabbi Yossi Omer, Kohen, she'alsa biyado te'ena. So you have a Kohen who happened to get a fig of Tevel. Now, presumably he wants to eat it. So what does he do? He says like this. He says, Amar tehenazu, this fig, trumaso be'ukta. The stem of the fig will be truma. Ma'aser Rishon b'tzafona, the northern part of the fig will be considered Ma'aser Rishon. U'Ma'aser Sheni le'droma, and the southern part of the fig will be considered Ma'aser Sheni. And it happens to be either year 1, 2, 4, and 5 when you're obligated to Ma'aser Sheni. V'hi shnas Ma'aser Sheni. The Kohen is where? In Yerushalayim. Or it's Ma'aser Ani, or it's the year 3 or 6, it's Ma'aser Ani, and he's standing in the Gvulin. He's outside of Yerushalayim, Hu B'Gvulin. So once again, he's taken off Tevel because he made it Truma and Ma'aser, and then either Ma'aser Sheni or Ma'aser Ani. So there's just one thing that he's missing, and that he's going to get Malkus for. Achla, if he eats it, Loka Achas, he's liable for one. Which one is he liable for? He's liable because after you take off Ma'aser, you have to also take off Trumas Ma'aser from your tithe to give some of that tithe to a Kohen. So even though he took everything else off it, but he's missing one. Yeah. So because of that, he's liable one set of lashes. Yeah. Now Truma, he ate Truma. He's a Kohen. He could do that. Ma'aser Ani or Ma'aser Sheni, anybody could eat it. Even a non-Kohen can eat it. So he's only liable one. He didn't take off after taking off tithes. If they still take off Trumas Ma'aser, that remains in a state of Tevel, and for that he gets Malkus. Yeah. Now, what if a non-Kohen ate this? V'zar sha'achla lo kishtayim. If a zar eats, a non-Kohen eats it, he's going to be liable too, because even though Meiser Oni and Meiser Sheni a non-Kohen could eat. However, Truma, a Kohen cannot eat. A non-Kohen cannot eat. Thank you. So originally we said that the Kohen's only obligated by one negative prohibition. Taima de Isei be Yerushalayim. It sounds like it's only because he's in Yerushalayim. But Habegvulin, but if he was outside of Yerushalayim and it was the time of Meiser Sheni, so then we would say he's Loka Shalosh. 1 second. Yeah, so what would the 3 be? What, the Kohen would get 3? What would be the Kohen's 3?
Double,
yeah.
Second one for Truma, and a third for...
I mean, a non-Kohen.
Nice and shady outside the first.
Right. So really, originally, you'd be liable, I guess, really means 1 or 2, depends if you're Kohen or non-Kohen. But if you're outside Jerusalem, you'd be liable 3. But it doesn't say here that you entered Jerusalem and exited. It sounds like you're on your way to Jerusalem. Before you got there, you ate Meiser Sheni, and you're going to get Makkos for that. But we just said you're not obligated in the prohibition of eating Meiser Sheni outside of Yerushalayim until you've entered into Yerushalayim. Only once you have an obligation to eat Meiser Sheni, you have a negative commandment to not eat it outside. You have a negative commandment to eat it outside of Yerushalayim. If you're not in Yerushalayim yet, you wouldn't be obligated. And yet here it says that if you would be in the Gvulin, in the boundaries, in the areas outside of Yerushalayim, then you would be liable for eating Meiser Sheni. The Afagav Lavro Pnei Choma, even though he didn't enter into the walls of Yerushalayim, he's still obligated. That seems to fly in the face of what we just said of Rav Asi and Rabbi Yochanan. Says the Gemara, you're right. The Aili V'Afki. You can make the case that it's a case where he entered and exited. It says he was in Yerushalayim. If he wasn't in Yerushalayim, it could be a case where he entered and exited. How did he get outside of Yerushalayim? One of 2 ways. He never reached Yerushalayim, or he reached and then left. So it says, if that's true, so then my lamemra. What's the novelty in that? So that's obvious. You entered and you left, so you're obligated. Says no. Hacha mayaskinan can go the ailinhu b'tivlaihu. It's interesting. When you entered Yerushalayim, it was in its tevel state. You haven't designated it as Meiser Sheni yet. So once you enter, let's say you have food that you said this is Meiser Sheni, then you entered Yerushalayim, then you exited. If you eat that, lashes. What if you entered with food that you have not yet taken Meiser Sheni off of, but it's potential Meiser Sheni food? How do you view that? And now you exit. It's, so to speak, its raw state, meaning it's entered in its non-Meiser Sheni state. Because Savar and this brisa holds of the opinion that matanos shelo hurmu kimishu hurmu damyan, that matanos, that Meiser Sheni, these gifts that have not yet been taken off truma, or Meiser in this case, it's as if it was taken off. Because maybe all you need is it to be in its potential state. As long as it has potential right now, that if you were to take it off right now, you would be obligated to eat it. So maybe that's enough that when you're outside of Yerushalayim and you do take it off, you'll have a negative prohibition to eat it. The Savar Reb Yossi matano shalahurmu kemisha hurmu damyan, and Reb Yossi would hold that different foods that have to be taken off truma and meiser, even if they weren't taken off, it's as if they were taken off. It's close enough. 1 second. Yeah. It's a little bit difficult for me because Rabbi Yochanan really said that only once you have an obligation to eat it, you have a prohibition of eating it outside of Yerushalayim. Here, if you walk in it, it's in its tevel state, and you haven't taken Meiser Sheni, you don't have a commandment to eat it. It's prohibited. Unless, but it's, I don't know. Okay, it needs more work. Fine. So now this idea that this brisa holds, that Rabbi Yossi holds, that things that need to be taken off, that the tithes have to be taken off, and even if they weren't, but for certain halachas, it's as if they were taken off, like our case. So that's going to go against the following brisa. Tanya Rabbi Shimon Yehuda Omer, Mishum Rabbi Yossi, the same Rabbi Yossi. He says, Lo nechlaku beis Shammai ubeis Hillel al peiros shelo nigmru malachtan the avru b'Yerushalayim sheyifta ma'aser sheni shelahen the yochel b'chol makom. Let's say you have ma'aser sheni, but they weren't completed yet, meaning the fruits weren't fully ripe. They weren't fully ripe. So now they're in Yerushalayim. So Rabbi Yosef says, Beis Hillel, Beis Shammai both agree that that if those fruits went through Yerushalayim, so you can redeem them anywhere you want, and you can eat them anywhere you want, because they weren't ripe yet, they weren't fully ripe yet, and therefore that is not enough for Meiser Sheni. Yeah. Yeah, they have to be finished off. The requirement for Meiser Sheni, yeah, it has to have grown to a certain level of completion. If it hasn't got there yet, then the halakha is not going to apply. That everyone agrees to. Bialman nechlaku, over there in Meiser Sheni, what do Beis Hillel and Beis Shammai argue about? Al peiros shenigmar malachtan, fruits that have completed their growing process. The avru b'Yerushalayim, and now they went through Yerushalayim. So now what happens? Beis Shammai omrim yachzir ma'aser sheni shelahem v'yochel Yerushalayim. So they pass through Yerushalayim, and therefore Beis Shammai says you have to go back and take them back to Yerushalayim and eat them over there. Well, Beis Hillel omrim not yifta v'yochel b'chol makom. Beis Hillel says, well, they passed through Yerushalayim, you're right, but they were never designated as Meiser Sheni. So Beis Hillel says, since they never entered Yerushalayim while they were officially Meiser Sheni, you can redeem them and eat them anywhere you want, because they have to be Meiser Sheni when you bring them in. Bringing fruits in that have completed their growing process, but have not been designated as Meiser Sheni, that doesn't matter. They have to be designated as Meiser Sheni. Now, Rabbi Yossi just told us before that even if they're not designated, they're as if they're designated. And here Rabbi Yossi says that according to Beis Hillel, if you haven't designated it yet, so then the halakha doesn't apply. And the halakha presumably follows Beis Hillel. So that would make a contradiction between Rabbi Yossi and Rabbi Yossi. Do you need Meiser Sheni to be in a designated state when it enters Yerushalayim? Or even if it's not designated, but it's potentially fitting to be designated, that's good enough. If you hold that these gifts, these food that have not yet been taken off, their trumas and maestras are as if they were taken off. So here you went through Yerushalayim. The walls of Yerushalayim absorb them, meaning they've entered. So that's a problem. So the Gemara has a few answers. Amar Rabba, interesting answer. Mechitza le'achol da'araisa. The mechitza, the wall of Yerushalayim to eat the produce, so that is biblical. But mechitza liklot is derabanan, is only rabbinic. So meaning once you've entered the walls of Yerushalayim, so now you are obligated to eat it in Yerushalayim. That's biblical. But this idea that once you've entered once you've entered, it's absorbed it, so to speak, and now you can't leave and eat it outside of Yerushalayim, that's going to be rabbinic, I think, right? Yeah. to eating it. The entry of Meiser Sheni to Yerushalayim creates, against eating it outside, okay. But Mechitza Lichla only Derabanan. So the idea that when you enter, you can only eat it inside and it's prohibited to eat it outside is biblical. The prohibition that once you bring it inside and you cannot redeem it anymore, that's only rabbinic. That once it's entered Yerushalayim, you can no longer redeem it because the rule is you can only redeem it outside of Yerushalayim. That rule we're saying is only rabbinic. But betivle. Lo gazer rabbanan. They only made this decree when right now it's Meiser Sheni. But when it's in its tevel state, if it went through Yerushalayim, so then you could still redeem it anywhere you want. So that base Hillel said, you could redeem it anywhere. You could redeem it. That's going to be rabbinic because it's in its tevel state. You haven't yet designated as Meiser Sheni. So if you haven't yet designated as Meiser Sheni, when it went through the walls of Yerushalayim and then left, so you can still redeem it anywhere you want. That's but if it was in its Meiser Sheni state and it was designated as Meiser Sheni, so then you can no longer redeem it anywhere you want. So really, Rabbi Yossi holds that when it goes through Yerushalayim, even if you haven't designated yet, there's still a prohibition to eat it outside of Yerushalayim. That which Beis Hillel said you can redeem it anywhere you want. That redeeming is a rabbinic enactment, and it only applied when it's in its Meiser Sheni state. But if it's in its untithed state, so then even if it went through the walls of Yerushalayim, you could still redeem it outside the walls of Yerushalayim.
Use the term merely rabbinical.
Merely rabbinical.
Make it sound. Oh.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay, so that is the first answer. The second answer is how to reconcile the two Rabbi Yossis. We're about to start a new mission. Perfect time.
Still tracking with the much training.
Yes.
Quick scan.
Okay, so Ravina says, Ravina Amar, Kigon, though the case is Kigon denakile bekanya. Really, it's the cases like we had a little bit earlier. You have a long stick with you. At the end of the stick is your Meiser Sheni. And that first Rabbi Yossi that says that you'd be liable 3 sets of Malkos is not a case where you entered and you left, or it's a case where you have entered into the walls of Yerushalayim. The Meiser is on the back of your stick, and that hasn't entered yet. And says Ravina, I hold that's already enough. That's enough to be considered like your fruits are also inside the walls of Yerushalayim. This was Rav Papa's question on the bottom of the previous Amud. What happens when you're inside and the stick with the fruits on the outside? Rav Papa didn't know what the answer was. He left it off as a teku. I don't know. But Ravina says, I do know. That is considered that you have entered the walls of Yerushalayim. And that's what Rabbi Yossi meant, that if you'd be outside of Yerushalayim, you're liable 3 sets of lashes. It's not where you entered and you left, and it's not where you haven't got there yet. It's where you've got there, but the mice is on the back of the stick, and he holds that's enough to be considered enough to get lashes. Yeah. Okay. So hakoreach karcha barosho. Not naturally, but you make a bald spot in your head. So, or hamakiv peas rosho. You take off the sides of your head. We'll see what that is exactly. Or hamashkes peas zikno, or you destroy in some way, shape, or form your beard. The hasoret srita achas alames. You make a scratch on your body over somebody who died, someone who dies, and your reaction is you make a scratch in your body. Yeah, I'd imagine this would apply even if someone didn't die. It's just stated by that. Yeah, I imagine so. So let's say you make 1 scratch on your body. Sounds like some kind of permanent hole in your body, permanent scratch. So a cut, yeah. Does it say anything about it being permanent? or just even a temporary cut. And I have in my head that a srita is more permanent.
Scarification.
You make a scar, right? You make a scar. That's a good word. Scar. Yeah, you make, meaning a cut that doesn't scar wouldn't go. I don't know. Sounds like that. Yeah, that's the word. A scar. You make a scar, a cut. Yeah. So let's say you make one for 5 people who died. 5 people who died, and you do one big cut, or chamisha sritos, or you do 5 cuts for 1 dead person. So there you say you're chayiv al kol achas. You're liable for each one. It's interesting. Even 1 cut for 5 dead people, you're liable 5, not 1. That's interesting.
I think like if you cut yourself on purpose, but even if you're not cutting for dead people, right?
In some cultures, that scarification is actually a sign of mourning.
Right. Yeah.
I know, but I think like kids, kids that get emotional and cut themselves, scar themselves.
Yeah, it could be that they take out this word achas. It's not 1 cutting on 5, but you're really cutting. I don't know. They say it's 1 cutting for 5. Some take out the word 1 over here.
1 scratch over 5.
Yeah, that's amazing. That's very interesting. 1 scratch over 5 dead people, you get liable 5 lashes. Oh, here. Yeah, Rashi says that take out achas. It doesn't only mean achas. Okay, we have to see. Yeah, that'd be very interesting. For 1, you're liable 5, or you do 5 scratches for 1 dead person. You're chayiv al kol achas. You're liable each one for each dead person that you made a permanent scratch over. So now, al harosh shtayim, on one's head. Al harosh shtayim, achas mikan va'achas mikan. For taking off the parts of your head, so the 2 ends of your head, you're liable for each one. Each we'll see each side of your head. Yeah, thank you. Ala zaken shtayim, on the beard 2. Ala zaken shtayim mikan, v'shtayim mikan, v'achas milamata. So if you do the 4 corners of the head and the beard, then you'll be liable 5. Right? Ala zaken shtayim mikan, v'shtayim mikan, v'achas milamata. Right? You get 5. Yeah. If you look at a beard, right? A beard has the 4 corners of the beard, 1, 2, 3, 4, and then the part in the middle. Yeah. So that's going to be, yeah. So yeah. Now, what does destroying mean? Is if you leave anything, what does it mean? Yeah, that we have to see. Yeah. The whole halachas of shaving, this is where it comes up. So Rabbi Eliezer Omer, certain shavers are actually not so good. Rabbi Eliezer Omer, if you would take it all at 1 shot, however that works, see how that works. And you're only obligated once to use a shaver as opposed to scissors. Rabbi Eliezer Omer, even different kinds of tweezers, right? That's very machmer. He's very stringent. Even different kinds of different tweezers, 2 kinds of tweezers, I think. Tweezers, pluckers, that you're obligated for. Okay. So let's see. So I'm going to come back tomorrow with long beard. Yeah. So I guess it doesn't work overnight, right? It takes some time. Okay. So Tana Rabbanan lo yikarchu. You cannot make a bald spot. Yachol afilu karach arba v'chamisha krichos lo yechayv ala achas. Even if you make 4 or 5 bald spots, you're only obligated 1. Tam lomar karcha. It says lo yikarchu karcha. It says a double language. L'chayv al kol karcha v'karcha. To be liable for each and every bald spot. Berosham. So, Berosham ma Talmud lomar. What does it mean? You're making it on your head. Lefisha namar losis godedu. It says that you shouldn't make this indentation, this scratch. Velo tasimu korcha beineinechem, and you shouldn't make it in between your eyes. Lemeis, for a dead person, yachol yehei chayiv ela al beineinechem. It says beineinechem. You'd have thought that you're only liable if you make the bald spot on the part that's in between your eyes. Minayin lerabos kol harosh. How do you know to include the entire head. Talmud Lomar Birosham. It says by Kohanim that it includes their head. The Rabbos Kol Harosh. Says the Gemara, that's in Vayikra by Kohanim. The Ainli Alav Kohanim Shariba Behanakas Mitzvahs Yiseiros. Maybe Kohanim have extra stringencies because the Torah added for them more mitzvahs. They get more mitzvahs. More mitzvahs comes with more responsibility. So maybe only they have the prohibition of not making bald spots in their head. But us regular Jews over here, but Yisrael Minayin. So it says Nemar Kan Korcha, Nemar Lahalan Korcha. It says Korcha in both places, a bald spot in both places. Malahalan Chayiv Alkal Korcha Korcha. So just like over there by Kohanim you be chayiv for each and every bald spot. Al Harosh Kebein Ha'einayim, on your head is like between your eyes. Afkan Chayiv Al Kol Korcha V'Korcha. So to here you're liable for every by Yisrael. You're liable for each and every bald spot that you make, even if it's not by your eyes, it's somewhere on your head, you'll be liable. Chayav Al Harosh Kebein Ha'einayim, you'll be liable on your head like you are between the eyes. Umale al hames, just like over there, it's when you do it in reaction to a dead person. Afkan al hames. So to over here, it's going to be in reaction to a dead person. Yeah.
Did I ever mention eyebrows?
We're going to see that it could be a violation of trying to be like a woman. Lots of Portland, whatever. Yeah. Yeah, so I think
Like the guy with the unibrow can shave it.
right, shaving the sides of your head, the payas is not your eyebrows, but you're not supposed to. I think the unibrow is the whole question. A man not supposed to take out his armpit hair or hair down there. It could be eyebrows also included. Yeah, let's see. Good question. We can look it up. So okay. So honey arba v'chamesh krichos hechidami. Like how do you do 4 or 5 at once? So like what does it mean 4 or 5? Ilema bezachar zeh ubechamish hasraos. A guy gives you 5 warnings. Warning, bald spot, warning, bald spot, warning, bald spot. So pshita, that's obvious. Yes, you'll be liable for each and every bald spot you make. You got warned, you violated. That's going to be not good. Ella, what happened? Bechada hasra mimachayet. If it's 1 warning and 5 bald spots, so you're only liable 1, not 5. V'hatnan, I'll prove it to you. Nazir, shayashos yayin kol hayom. A Nazirite can't drink wine. And if he drinks wine the whole day, what's he obligated for every sip, every bottle he finishes, every l'chaim he takes? No, eino chayv alachas, because he only got 1 warning. Amru lo al tishta. He gets 2 warnings. V'hu shoseh chayv alachas v'achas. You're liable for each one. So what's the case here that you're liable for 4 or 5 bald spots? Lo tzricha desak chamish etzba'oso. So you put on your hands some kind of hair removal cream, and nasa ve'osvinu b'bas achas. So you got a warning to not do a bald spot, and now you went and you made 5 bald spots. So that's considered a warning for each of the bald spots you made. So that you'll get 5. That's you get 5 lashes. Yeah. So you got 1 hasra, you got 1 warning, but then you took your hand, put on your face, and you came up with 5 bald spots. That will get you 5 sets of lashes. It's like you have a warning. The warning was don't make a bald spot, and you at one time made 5 bald spots. So that's a warning for each one of those bald spots, and therefore you'll get lashes. Okay. The kama shiur korcha. What does bald spot mean? How much is a bald spot? Until your wife tells you it's not good. Like what's the level? So the kama shiur korcha. So it's a nice wife, maybe not. Okay. So Rav Huna Omer kidei sheyira merosha. Until you could see the scalp of your head, you got to see. You have to see, like seeing your reflection in your head. I mean, that's shiny, but you have to be able to see the head. Rabbi Yochanan, Rabbi Shimon, kigris, like a bean. Thank you. Acherim omrim kidei sheyira merosho. Didn't we just say that?
No.
Rav Huna Amar Kadesh Yira Merosha.
Yeah.
What's this? It's just repeating. It sounds like a gears.
So the size of the bean.
Yeah, no, because okay, if you read the parentheses, then it makes sense. Kitanoi, like the two, so these two opinions of seeing your head or like a bean's worth is like the following two opinions: Kamashir Korcha Kigris, like a bean, Achem Omrim Kadesh Yiru Merosha. So these two opinions are reflected, according to the parentheses, in two Tanaic opinions also. Fine. Amr Yehuda Bar Chaviva Ligiba Plata Tanai. It's actually a three-way dispute among the Tanaim. Chadamar Kigris. One, you have to have a bean to take off a bean's amount of your head. That's already considered bald. Interesting. Chadamar Kadesh Yira Mirosha. No, you have to see your head. Chadamar Kishtei Cyrus. And one said it's actually only 2 hairs. Now, on this, that it's 2 hairs, the Ikademapik, some take it out and they say, no, that third opinion is not 2 hairs. Rather, the Mapik Shtei Cyrus Al Kadasha. And it's actually a lentil. So you take out 2 hairs and it's actually a lentil. So you have 3 opinions, but the third opinion is disputed. Is it mean 2 hairs or it means a lentil? This simonich, and a way to remember this is a phrase from Negayim, Baheres Kigris, Umechaye Bechadashim. It's just a reference to tzaras. Here you go, this is Parsha, yeah? Baheres is tzaras. That size is a gris. However, if it has some healthy spot inside of it, the side of a lentil, it'll be good. But it's just pointing out, if you want to remember the correct version, so to speak, it's a gris, a bean. Following a bean, it's a lentil and not 2 hairs. So to remember that the third opinion is a lentil and not the opinion of 2 hairs, you keep this in mind. That gris comes first and then ke'adasha followed by a lentil, and not that it's followed by 2 hairs. So just it's a mnemonic to remember that really this opinion that holds that we take out 2 hairs and instead replace it with a lentil. You see here that a lentil follows a bean, and so too in this case, that third opinion of a lentil follows the opinion of that it has to be the size of a bean. Fine. Tana Hanotel, the Bryce Tana taught us Hanotel Malay Pi Hazog B'Shabbos Chayim. On Shabbos, if you take off, you can't take off hairs on Shabbos. It's a malachah called gozes, shearing. By taking off hairs of an animal, you can't take off hairs. By the way, this goes for fingernails also. This is a hard one for many people, but it's also or taking off skin off your lip. It's all under gozes, prohibition of gozes. So you can't take off amount of that fills up your zug, your like a pair of scissors called the zug, the Shabbos. How much is that? What does it mean in Malay Pia Zug? How many hairs is that? The Kama Malay Pia Zug. Rabbi Yehuda Shtaim. It means 2 hairs. 2 hairs. The Bryce has taught Lekorcha Shtaim. It sounds like that Bryce was saying only for a bald spot it's going to be 2 hairs. Sounds like not for Shabbos. Says the Gemara, no. Ema v'chein Lekorcha Shtaim. Really, it's just saying for Shabbos it's taking off 2 hairs, and the bald spot is also what's a bald spot? Taking off 2 hairs. Yeah. So I'm just thinking now that the Torah says you can't make a bald spot. So it's interesting. Does the Torah mean to say you can't be bald and therefore you have to actually see your head maybe to be bald? Or it just means you can't make yourself more bald than you were originally. And therefore even 2 hairs, you're already you're on the way to becoming more bald. It's interesting to know. Yeah, okay. So fine. Tanya Namihachi, Brisa supports this by saying the following. Hanotel Pia Zug B'Shabbos, you take off the amount that fills your scissors, which we know now is chayav. How much is that? Kalam Le Pia Zug, 2 hairs. Taking off 2 hairs on Shabbos, you're liable. Rabbi Eliezer Omer, Achas. Ooh, even 1 hair, you're liable. Umodim Chachamim Rabbi Eliezer. The Chacham agreed to Rabbi Eliezer that even 1 hair is going to be liable, but only in 1 case. B'malaket levenos mitoch shechoros. Afilu achashu chayim. If you have 1 white hair, you have white hairs in the middle of black hairs, even 1 hair is already going to be liable. What's the reasoning? 2 is always a significant amount. 2 letters on Shabbos, 2 hairs. 2 is the amount that the rabbis thought was a significant amount to consider your act an act that's liable on Shabbos. But sometimes you have, even if it's less, like here, it's 1 hair, but it's significant like 2 hairs. Because if, let's say you have a white hair, you want it out. You want to look prettier, whatever, you want more handsome. So that white hair out is significant enough, like 2 black hairs out. Similar example is erasing on Shabbos. You erase 2 letters, you're obligated. What if you have 1 extra letter in your Sefer Torah? So Sefer Torah is possible, it's invalid, you can't use it. Can you erase that letter on Shabbos? So would that be liable like 2 letters? That 1 erasing is so significant because you just made it Sefer Torah kosher, it'll be the same as 2. Sometimes you have these kinds of things, meaning 2 is the level of importance. But sometimes you could have 1 that's also as important as 2. Yeah. So afil achashu chai. So the davar zeh, this touched upon eyebrows a little bit. The davar zeh afilu b'chol aser. Now taking out your white hair from your black hairs to look more handsome is obligated even on a weekday. Why? Mishum shenamar lo yilbash gever simlas isha. You cannot dress like a woman. It doesn't only mean you can't wear women's clothing, but also it means you can't take off certain hairs like a woman. Here comes Jared with this, yeah?
If you got a white beard, you dye it. You're taking away the white, right?
You know, it's been in my head to look up because my hair is going away at a rapid rate.
Yeah, it goes fast.
Ever since Portland and then Daf Yomi, they're just going, the kid's getting older. Yeah, like this. I blame mostly Shmuel, but it's fine. No, so yeah. So between Shmuel and Steve, you know. So okay. So let's do one more. Hamakif payas rosho, the sides of your head. Tanur Rabbanon payas rosho sof rosho. The sides of your head means the ends of your head. What the ends of your head? It's a circle, right? There's not really beginning, right? It's the Ezu Sof Rosho. It means Zeha Mashvet Tzida'ov La'acharei Ozno Uliftachaso. So I think what it means, you can see the footnotes if I'm right, that there's the parts of your head that connect. There's hair, and then the hair ends, and you have your face, which we would call the temples. Now it says behind your ear, so it means it starts here and it goes behind your ear. And that it for sure means this, the temples. That I'm fairly certain about. It's the part that connects this part of your head to this part of your head. It says, but it could be that also it's behind your ear. That's also part of the connection. And maybe that's where payas come from, or strict not. I don't know. So it definitely means this part. Now it says after behind your ear. It means the part that goes behind your ear. I don't know. I'm just not clear about how to translate those words exactly.
Where
it needs more research. Yeah.